Hi guys, Kutemwa here, and today I'll be sharing with you guys the timeline that really helped me last year as I was applying to grad school. So I'll be starting my PhD this fall, stories in other videos. But the point is that this process is very involving. It has the potential to really stress you out. It can even limit your potential if not managed well. So it's really important to be intentional about how you spend the year before and to have a plan. So I hope that in some way, shape or form that this video will be able to bring up some relevant points so that you can be aware and also plan as much as you can. So yes, so I'll be taking you through the year, right? So I'm going to divide this into 3 phases. The first phase is spring, so let's say from January to about June or late May is when you should already know the schools that you're applying to. Then the summer, which is from June to about August, should be when you're preparing your application materials. And then from August until December, November, depending on when your deadlines fall, is of course you refining and submitting your applications. So I'll break these phases down in detail. First phase is searching for schools. So I have a whole series because I think it's really important that you apply to the right schools. This can make or break your application, first of all. And second of all, it determines where you end up. So you don't want to end up at a school that doesn't have what you need and is not pushing you towards your goals for being in that program. So I suggest that you go back and watch that 3-part series. It takes you through knowing yourself, so knowing what do you need in a program, and this will determine how you search for schools. So that's part 2, looking into the schools. Part 3 is now you breaking it down and finding the schools that you're going to apply to, so making your final list of schools. So it's really important to do this early, really important, because it determines your preparation during the summer, right? So we said phase 1 is looking into schools, finding the schools that you're applying to. The summer is now you preparing your materials. So schools are very different. I applied to all chemistry PhD programs at 9 schools. Each school, even though it was the same exact program, had different materials, different things involved in the process. So that was important to know up front what's going to be needed from me when submitting my applications, right? So phase 1, know the schools that you're applying to. Another thing I suggest for phase 1 is asking your recommenders who are going to recommend you. So most programs will need a minimum of 3 recommendations, most if not all. We need a minimum of 3 recommendations. So you want to sit down and ask yourself who, I'll make a video on that, but ask yourself who do you want to recommend you. Reach out to them as soon as possible because obviously other people are also thinking of them in mind, and it's never obvious. It's not like, oh, this person knows, I'll ask them. It's never like that until you ask them, or maybe it is, I don't know. But it's really important to just reach out and say, oh, I'm applying to grad school this year, what do you think? So have your recommenders already know that you want to submit your applications, submit your recommendations really early on. And this is also really important for phase 2 as well. So phase 2 is preparing your materials, and you want to include your recommenders in this process because first of all, it makes them be like, they'll be more involved so you get more help. But second of all, it gives them like kind of this burden, it's like they're rooting for you more because they helped you in the process and you're more dear to them and your application is more dear to them, because they were part of it. And they also get like they have more material for their letter because they know what you're writing about in your essays and things like that. So it's really important to involve them in the summer. So this is now phase 2, right? You're preparing your materials. So like I said, materials are going to be very different. I will have videos, taking us through each of those things. But the biggest thing is essays. I'm yet to see a grad school that doesn't include, a grad school application that doesn't include essays. So the 2 main essays that you have to write are your statement of purpose and your personal statement. Very different. I'll have a video on that. But the point is that these are generally going to be required for almost every school. So you having draft essays for this that are refined and you've taken them back and forth between your recommenders and gotten feedback is really important. So you want to spend the summer first of all watching videos like what you're doing right now, watching videos of people who've applied to these schools before, attending seminars. Some schools will have like pages. I'll be sharing resources later, but they have pages where they'll break down what each essay includes and things like that. So you want to empower yourself as much as you can. So prepare yourself, draft those essays. You have to personalize them for each school later on. But draft those essays, have them, take them back and forth between your recommenders. I can't tell you the number of times I had to rewrite my essays. And it's good because when I look at where I started, maybe I'll do that, read my very first essay and then read the one that I actually submitted. But it's really important to get as much feedback as you can. And I think also the summer, if you're in school, the summer, most people are not as busy. So I think you have a better chance hearing back from your recommenders depending on who they are and what they do during the summer. So summer is, we want to make sure we have draft essays as much as we can, and the further that you go, so if you have draft essays that you're now happy with, then you can now personalize, so you get further and further into the process. And during the fall, The fall, if you're like me, you'll be taking classes, you have a senior project and a senior thesis, there's so much going on, you're preparing for your graduation and blah blah. It's a very busy time. And then including that, and these are your final classes, they're probably the hardest classes you've ever taken, right? So it's really important to get as much out of the way as you can. I remember during the fall, I was like, I had my draft essays ready. In no time, I was like, oh my goodness, it's already October. And it went by so fast. So you want to make sure that during the fall, you're very intentional about finalizing everything. And the other thing is your recommenders can't submit unless you've invited them to your application. So you can't save it until the end and say, I'll invite them, in October when your deadline is 1st November. That's the thing about me. All my programs, except one, had the deadline on 1st November. It was so early. So the fall is when you are intentional about planning. What I did for that, like to have my recommenders have access early, even though maybe I wasn't ready to submit, was I started my application. So I went on the page, I made an account, and I put all my details in so that I was able to invite my recommenders, even though I hadn't yet submitted the application. And I sent my recommenders list to say, these are the schools, I've invited you here, so that they can also start writing if they haven't started already. And, be ready for that, yes. But I'll go into details about the things I keep saying this, but I will break down everything later on. This is just a general outline, and everything is put in such a way that you will also be ready. So if you already know the schools, then it also determines how you do your research during the summer, and then during the fall you're already maybe even connected with some people from those schools and different things like that. And yes, so this is the general outline of how I think you should spend the year before. And it's really important, like I said, to be as intentional as you can, because you've already heard there's so much that's involved in the process, and you want to be as ready as you can and submit applications that you've taken your time to refine. And this will not happen if you're doing things last minute during the fall. So yes, thanks for watching. Stick around, subscribe so that you don't miss out on the future videos, and let me know in the comments if you want me to talk about anything specific. I would love to do that. Alright, bye.